Hey folks, patch 10.1.5 has added many new systems to help your characters get caught up, and by using them, I managed to gear a fresh level 70 Guardian Druid up to item level 415 in just a few days. In this video, I'll explain every system that I used to accomplish this, and how you can do it as well. The moment you hit level 70 on a new character, the game will bombard you with multiple different quests, and it can be a bit overwhelming trying to figure out which activities you should focus on first. While prior World of Warcraft expansions forced you to grind multiple different systems at once, this is not the case in Dragonflight. Your item level is the only thing that actually matters in terms of getting caught up. Since the best catch-up gear is usually available from content released in the most recent patch, your first priority should be to reach the new patch 10.1 zone, Zaralek Cavern, as quickly as possible. In order to get there, you'll first need to complete the quest Hidden Legacies, which you should have received the moment you reached level 70. If this is your very first character in Dragonflight and you can't find the quest in your log, you probably have yet to finish the main leveling campaign. If you need help figuring out what to do for this, I've linked my Dragonflight campaign guide in the video description below. Once you have Hidden Legacies in your log, you can speak to the NPC at the top of Valdrakken, who directs you towards the Forbidden Reach. This zone was added in patch 10.0.7, and while the rewards here are no longer worth farming, you will need to complete all of the campaign quests before you can access Zaralek Cavern. Thankfully, the questline only takes around 30 minutes, and once you've finished it on your main character, all of your future alts can skip it and go directly to the patch 10.1 section of the questline. Now that you've reached the current patch content, you should continue along the Embers of Neltharion campaign until you've reached the town of Loam in Zaralek Cavern. Along the way, you should receive a handful of 376 item level quest rewards, and while these aren't super amazing, they'll at least be a nice upgrade compared to whatever you got while leveling. Once you reach Loam, I'd recommend setting your Hearthstone to the nearby inn, as you'll be returning here a lot. For now though, you should return to Valdrakken as there are a few other important things you need to do before continuing the patch 10.1 campaign. The first thing you should do here is to stop by the auction house and buy some 376 gear to replace the rest of your leveling items. Most of these green items are dirt cheap, and you should be able to purchase a full set of gear for just a few hundred gold. While you will be replacing all of this stuff later on, getting a massive boost in item level will save you a ton of time during the gearing process, and it should make the game a bit more fun, since it won't take you minutes just to kill a single mob. Next up, you'll want to unlock Time Rifts, a new feature added in the recent patch 10.1.5, and the associated questlines with it. The first quest, Dawn of the Infinite, can be picked up by speaking to Nozdormu at the top of Valdrakken. If you drop down off the eastern side of this tower and land in the subzone called the Bronze Enclave, you can pick up two more questlines. An NPC named Siazarathel offers you a quest called Aeon's Fringe, and you can head inside of the nearby inn and speak to Myra Dormi to grab the quest To Soridormi's Aid. Each of these three questlines unlocks a different part of the new patch 10.1.5 content, although they are all loosely related. The first quest, Dawn of the Infinite, will eventually direct you towards the new mega dungeon of the same name. This dungeon does drop really powerful gear, and while you will want to complete this questline eventually, it's a bit outside the scope of this video. Dawn of the Infinite is quite difficult and will generally require at least 420 item level to attempt, so you shouldn't worry about it until after you've followed all the steps in this video to improve your item level. To Soridormi's Aid will direct you towards the new Time Rifts, which you'll spend a lot of time doing in order to get caught up on gear. The last of these three quests, Aeon's Fringe, unlocks a few bonus questlines which grant currency that you can spend on bonus rewards from the Time Rift vendors. Speaking of which, as I mentioned previously, Time Rifts are a great way to get some pieces of gear, but you won't be able to get fully geared up just by running the rifts and nothing else. The system itself is fairly simple. Every hour on the hour, a new Time Rift event will activate in the Tierhold Reservoir subzone. This event doesn't require you to be in a group, though you will be completing it alongside other players in the open world. For 10 minutes, Soridormi will give you objectives to complete, and as other players within the area complete their objectives, a temporal essence bar will fill up at the top of the screen. Filling this bar isn't actually required in order to complete the Time Rift, but if you push it up to certain checkpoints, you'll automatically receive loot boxes in your inventory which contain bonus rewards. These boxes have a very small chance to reward pieces of item level 404 gear or cosmetic rewards like mounts or pets, but they're guaranteed to also give you a currency called Paracausal Flakes. This is the main currency used to buy rewards within Time Rifts, and almost every single activity you complete will give you a small amount of these flakes. Finally, once 10 minutes have passed, a portal will open in the center of the subzone, and taking it will lead you to a new area where you'll have to fight a boss alongside other players. Currently, these events are a bit laggy, and it can be difficult to actually participate in them, but as long as you do a single point of damage to the boss before it dies, you should automatically be eligible for rewards once the time rift completes. Killing this boss will grant you additional Paracausal Flakes, and it has a higher chance of dropping gear rewards. While you aren't always guaranteed to receive an item from these bosses, many of the new quests will give you something called Encapsulated Destiny, which you can use to guarantee a drop from the next time rift you complete. This item may be a cosmetic reward instead of a piece of usable gear, but there's no limit to the amount of time rifts you can run, so you're bound to get additional gear eventually. Additionally, completing your very first time rift each week will allow you to turn in a nearby weekly quest to Soridormi, which is guaranteed to give you a single dilated time capsule. This is a token that you can spend on item level 404 gear by speaking to a nearby vendor named She Everbreeze. This vendor offers you the ability to buy a 404 item in any slot, except for jewelry pieces such as rings or necklaces. While it may be tempting to grab a few items right this moment, I would highly recommend holding onto your time capsules until much later. The nice thing about this vendor is that there's zero RNG involved in purchasing an item. Once you have the token, you can pick exactly which armor slot you want a piece of gear for. This makes it a great way to fill in the gaps in your gear set later on once you've already gotten the rest of the rewards from content in patch 10.1. That being said, you still can get a few powerful early upgrades from these time rifts, specifically for your trinket slots. By talking to the other vendors near She Everbreeze, you can find them selling various 404 item level trinkets called Paracausal Fragments. Each of these trinkets has a special flavorful effect based on a powerful weapon in World of Warcraft lore, and while you can't equip two of the same trinket at once, you can equip two different types of Paracausal Fragments. Each one of these trinkets costs 1,750 Paracausal Flakes, which shouldn't take you very long to obtain, provided you remember to complete the time rifts whenever they spawn at the top of the hour. For melee DPS and tanks, I'd recommend purchasing the Paracausal Fragments of Doomhammer and Azzinoth, while ranged DPS should get Thunderfin and Azzinoth. For healers, there are two specific Paracausal Fragments designed for you, named Valinir and Seneschal. All of these trinkets are likely better than anything you'll get until you set foot in raids or dungeons, so you shouldn't be afraid to spend resources on upgrading them. On that note, I want to take a moment to quickly touch upon the new item upgrade system introduced in patch 10.1, since it is very important for getting caught up. If you look at most of your gear, you should see a line directly below the item level called the upgrade level, which will be followed by the words Explorer, Adventurer, or Veteran, and then two different numbers. In short, these words represent your item's upgrade track, and the two numbers indicate how close your item is to being fully upgraded. In order to upgrade an item, you'll need to bring it to a specific type of NPC that can be found in Loam or Valtraken, and you'll then spend a currency called Flightstones to improve the item level of your gear. As you reach higher item levels, you'll also need to spend an additional currency called Shadowflame Crests, which you'll begin to unlock as you progress further into patch 10.1. As an example of how this works, the items from time rifts are on the Veteran upgrade track, and they start off at the lowest upgrade level, 1 out of 8. If you spend enough Flightstones and Crests, it's possible to increase the item level of these pieces all the way up to 424, which is more than enough to begin doing raids or dungeons. I know all of this may sound a bit confusing and overwhelming, so if you would like additional information specifically on how the upgrade system works, I've linked my video on the subject in the description below. Now that we've covered all of the important stuff from time rifts, you'll want to use your Hearthstone and return to Loam. From here, you can pretty much complete anything that you see in Zaralek Cavern, as it's a fantastic way to get gear. Your primary goal should be to get Adventurer and Veteran gear in every single armor slot, though if you're lucky, you may also get a champion item from specific sources, which can be upgraded all the way up to 437. Within this zone, there are so many different sources that you can use to get gear, so if I spend an extremely long time explaining each one of them, this video would be an hour long. Instead, I'll give a quick summary of everything you should be doing within Zaralek Cavern and the item level rewards that you can expect by doing it. First, you'll pick up a quest fairly early on called A Worthy Ally Loam Nithid. You're able to complete this quest once every single week, and it gives a guaranteed piece of veteran gear, a large chunk of Loam Nithid rep, and an item called Splintered Spark of Shadowflame. These sparks are very important, and later on you'll be using them to craft powerful items, but I'll touch more on this topic towards the end of the video. All that you need to know for now is that completing this quest every single week should be one of your top priorities, as the reward is really good even after you've gotten more item level. Early on, you should end up completing this quest passively alongside the main patch 10.1 campaign, but later on you will need to go out of your way to farm Loam Niffin Rep in order to get your weekly Splintered Spark of Shadowflame. Once again, I have a separate video on this particular topic, which is linked below. Your top priority after picking up the aforementioned weekly quest should be to finish the entirety of the Embers of Neltharion campaign. The entire questline only takes a few hours, and along the way you'll get a ton of Loam Niffin reputation and a few smaller gear upgrades. Towards the end of the campaign, you'll also get a quest directing you to kill Sarkareth, the final boss of the new raid, Aberrus the Shadowed Crucible. The rewards from this quest are very good, but let's put a pin in that and discuss it again later. As you travel throughout Zaralek Cavern, you'll also run into many different world quests or bonus objectives. While these generally don't reward you with gear directly, they're very easy to complete and are a great source of Loam Niffin reputation, so you should try to complete as many as you can. Within this zone, you'll also find a wide variety of rare mobs, and while you can kill them for a chance at items on the Adventurer upgrade track, it's generally not worth your time to do so. Rares tend to take forever to solo, so unless you're really lucky and manage to loot a necklace or ring, the item you get will probably get replaced eventually. On the topic of world quests, you should be able to find a purple-colored world quest on your map called Zakali Elders. In order to complete it, you'll need to defeat a world boss encounter, which is something that you'll need to join a group for. Thankfully, Blizzard does most of the work for you, as once you get there, you can click on the little green eye next to the world quest and automatically join any available groups by signing up to them. You're able to kill this world boss once per week, and while it doesn't always give you gear, there is a chance that you'll receive an item level 421 piece on the champion track, which is really helpful early on. Once you reach the southern section of the zone, you'll find a town called Glimmerrock, and there are a few helpful questlines here that you can complete. A few of them will grant you reputation with the Loam Niffin, and there's also a quest that rewards you with a 398 item level trinket. While the trinkets offered are pretty good, this is less important now since you can get the Paracausal Fragments off time rifts. After completing a few side quests within Loam, you should unlock a minigame called Sniffin' Seeking Digs. You can complete 3 of these digs per week, and while the first one is completely free, the second and third attempts need to be unlocked by using items called dig maps. One of these dig maps is obtained by completing the previously discussed weekly reputation quest, and the other is tied to a separate questline where you get inducted into a Ponzi scheme. If you want to learn more about this Ponzi scheme questline and all of the rewards locked behind it, I have once again covered it in a separate video, which is linked in the description. The final activity you'll want to complete within Zaralek Cavern is the Researchers Under Fire event located within the center of the zone. This event starts 30 minutes after every hour, and it lasts for roughly 15 or 20 minutes. While you can do it solo, I would highly recommend looking for a group in the Custom tab of the LFG tool, as this will make it much easier to get the best rewards. Similar to how time rifts work, this event will give you bonus rewards depending on how efficiently you're able to complete the various objectives. However, time rifts only gave small bonus rewards for doing the objectives really well, whereas Researchers Under Fire requires you to do it really fast if you want to get the best rewards. If you manage to do this properly, you'll receive a bag called Indebted Researcher's Gift, and this will reward you with a random piece of gear on the champion upgrade track. You can only receive this specific reward once per week, but if you complete Researchers Under Fire a second time, you'll receive a different bag that gives you a piece of gear on the Veteran upgrade track. While it may not be as good as the first reward you received, a veteran item is still really nice for catch-up, so I'd recommend doing this event at least twice every week if you're trying to get caught up. As a side note, these bags also give you a bunch of currency called Unearthed Fragrant Coins. If you speak to an NPC named Spinsoa in Loam, you can exchange these coins for additional Whelp and Drake Shadowflame crests, which you can then use to further upgrade your gear. Just make sure not to buy the volcanic equipment chest sold by this vendor, as while it may seem like a nice way to get caught up in gear, it is actually complete bait and a waste of your flight stones. Lastly, as you complete activities within the zone and progress through the main campaign, you should receive a large amount of reputation with the Loam Niffin. If you return to the quartermasters within Loam, Harlow Mari, and Mimup, you can receive a bunch of free flight stones and Shadowflame crests. Also, after you reach Renown 8, you're able to buy a Veteran chess piece from the Quartermaster, which may be an upgrade for you provided you didn't loot one already. There's also a pair of 415 boots unlocked at Renown 14, but it will take you a little while to reach this rank and be able to purchase it. While that covers everything important within Zaralek Cavern, there are still a few final things you can do to get a bit of extra gear. Midway through the Embers of Neltharion campaign, you should unlock a breadcrumb quest named Fyrakk's Forces, which directs you towards another world event called Fyrakk Assaults. Unlike most of the other content in patch 10.1, this event takes place in the original Dragonflight zones, and it rotates between Onaran Plains and Azur Span on a weekly basis. If you check your map, you should see a big glowing silver dragon icon which indicates where the assault is for the current week. The event is fairly straightforward overall. It gives you a few bonus quests which you can complete for gear, flightstones, and crests, and there are also additional rare mobs and chests within the area which you can loot for additional chances at gear rewards. Most of these items are on the Adventurer upgrade track, which means they aren't super helpful in the long term, though you do have a good chance to receive a necklace or a ring, which is nice considering you're unable to get those from time rifts. Also, while you're in this zone, you'll periodically see a bar at the top of your screen called Fyrakk's Fury, and in order to fill this up, all you need to do is kill mobs within the area. Once enough mobs have died, a short bit of roleplay will happen where Fyrakk slowly flies across the zone in your direction, and when he reaches you, a mini-boss will appear. The first time you defeat this mini-boss each week, you'll get an additional piece of veteran gear. Now that you've completed all of these activities, you should be around 400 to 405 item level. At this point, I'd recommend completing any available weekly dungeon quests, including one called Fighting is Its Own Reward, which you can pick up in a building towards the northern end of Aldraken. This quest tasks you with completing 5 heroic dungeons, and it rewards you with a piece of gear on the champion upgrade track. If you want to know the fastest way to complete this particular weekly quest, I've covered that in a separate video which, just like before, is linked in the description. This is the only quest that is guaranteed to be up every single week, but sometimes there are bonus events for Mythic Zero dungeons or Time Walking dungeons. If you want to know whether one of these weekly quests is available, you can look for it on the calendar, or you can talk to Khazra in the center of Aldraken to pick up the quest for the weekly event. Around this time, you can also return to the Time Rift vendor and spend any dilated time capsules that you manage to earn. Hopefully by now, you're only missing a veteran item in a few different slots, so you can use these tokens to fill in the gaps. The final activity you should do to get caught up is looking for raid, which you can queue up for in the group finder. If you're nervous about entering raids, don't worry, because LFR is extremely easy and the fights are designed to be killed with random people, and you also aren't expected to know any of the boss fights. Each boss within LFR will drop an assortment of items on the veteran track, and some pieces from Echo of Neltharion and Sarkareth will even be on the champion track. Your mileage may vary within LFR, as the items you need may not always drop, and then of course you still need to win the role against other players. With any luck though, you should be able to pick up at least 1 or 2 pieces across all LFR bosses every week, which is a fairly solid boost to your item level. Additionally, each boss you kill within LFR will give you a large chunk of Flightstones and Whelp Crests, which you can then use to further upgrade your gear. You'll also notice as you begin killing bosses that many of them will give you additional Splintered Sparks of Shadowflame, that item that I talked about earlier which is used for crafting. To top it all off, completing the final wing of LFR and killing Sarkareth will allow you to complete the associated campaign quest, giving you an Enchanted Worm's Shadowflame Crest. This is yet another crucial item for crafting powerful gear. However, the topic of crafting in Dragonflight, especially as it pertains to catch-up, has a lot of nuance that will require me to make an entirely separate video. If you followed all of these steps and spent all of your upgrades appropriately, you should be close to 415 item level. And if you want to learn more about how to use your Sparks of Shadowflame to craft powerful 437 items, make sure to check out part 2 in this series.